Welcome back to part 2 of this teacher career transition story. So if you haven't listened to part 1, head back to our channel and check that out before listening in because we're kicking off right where we left off. If you've already listened to part 1, then let's dive in. I'm Lisa Harding, ex-EdTech CEO turned certified teacher career coach. It wasn't all that long ago that I was recruiting, interviewing, and hiring teachers for roles in corporate America. Teachers that ended up being some of my all-time best employees. Fast forward through my own career transition, where I left my role as CEO to become a stay-at-home mom, I now work with and empower teachers to transform their lives by turning their once distant career dreams into realities. In this podcast, I give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to help you do the same. If you're a burnt-out teacher or simply need a change and you're looking to create a life you love, you're in the right place, friend. Let's get started.
So if people here want to break into their first job in Scrum, I know people have asked about certifications. Do you need a certain level of certification or experience to break into one of those first entry-level jobs?
I think what I would suggest is if you've never done it before, you need to familiarize yourself with it and probably do at least some of the low-level assessments to get a working knowledge. And if you find that the assessments really aren't going well because you just don't have the background in it enough, then I would spend some time reading up on that, getting familiar with it, and maybe even take some work in that field if you can. A lot of what I've learned too is it's the proximity that brings the knowledge. So if you can find a way to get in the door somewhere, even with a very entry-level position to start out with and get close to those folks, that's one way to do it. It's unlikely that with no interest or background in software that you're going to show up at a software company with a PSM1, Scrum Level 1 cert, and go, I'm ready to scrum your team. If you know nothing about software development, you're going to want to spend a little time getting familiar with it before you do it. Because again, Scrum does exist in other fields, but it's really focused mostly on software development.
Interesting. And then, so I heard Scrum Master 1 would be the certification that we at least want to start with. And then Chris was wondering, do you have any type of time frame? I know this can be very dependent on how much time you're putting in, but if someone today is like, I have absolutely zero knowledge and experience outside of this webinar, and I want to become a Scrum Master, how much time would it really take them to get the certification they need and really be like a viable candidate for a company?
If I'm being honest, and again, I had none of that experience either when I left teaching, okay? But I had a deep interest in technology. So there was that. I at least had that going for me. I started out in business development. I started out helping the company aim themselves at where they wanted to sell their product. So what that forced me to do was learn what the company did. If you can find a similar opportunity where you would get, again, like I said, like a low-level, entry-level position or a position with a small company, because sometimes they're really looking for help, and you're willing to apply yourself, ask a lot of questions, ask the stupid questions, feel like you're the dumbest person in the room for a while. It's really hard for teachers, particularly when you're in charge of a classroom all the time and you usually know everything.
Yeah.
I had to really rein myself in and be like, I don't know anything. Show me what to do. And you'll find sometimes they're going to be very forthcoming. Other times they're going to kind of throw you to the wolves and you're going to have to learn it on your own. But if you're willing to crack books, do research online and ask lots and lots of questions, you may find that you have an affinity for it. And that's what happened to me.
And so Barbara asked, and I think from your story, you started doing these certifications after you left the classroom, correct?
Correct. I didn't start my Scrum cert until I'd been out of the classroom for 3 years, already working primarily business development operations for that small cloud company.
Okay. Is it still something that as long as people are willing to put the time and effort in that they could manage doing certifications while still teaching?
I believe that is absolutely possible. Yes. For example, the Scrum Level 1 test at scrum.org. Now, it's not cheap. You're talking about, a couple $250 kind of thing. So I want to really ram that home. It's not going to be super cheap to do this. But it's not that hard of a test if you have studied the Scrum Guide and if you have a good idea of how Agile works and you've memorized enough of the basics, you should be able to do a pretty good job on that PSM1 test, I would say, within the first year or less of study. It really depends on how much you apply yourself and how much you already know about that information. So again, because it's based around the concepts in Scrum and the Scrum Guide itself, and the Scrum Guide is very short and it's easy to digest, I can see a lot of people getting their Scrum 1 within the first few months of leaving teaching.
Great.
But getting the job is not going to be a function of you having that low level cert. It's going to be how much are you applying yourself? Where did you put yourself? Who are you in front of? And where are you making a difference, right? And can you apply it there?
And I'm curious, in this field, do there tend to be opportunities that aren't even necessarily like a full-time at a company? Are there contracting or part-time or things like that? Like, are those types of positions open within like a Scrum Master, Agile coaching?
Yeah. Actually, project management is something that they often will hire somebody who has project management skills, and you can get a contract job. And in my case, I started working for this small cloud company when I was on unemployment. I was paid not very well for the first couple of years until they were ready to take me on really full time. At the first couple of years, I was not really working full time, but I was learning a lot. Then they said, hey, we're going to up your salary to this level. We want you to work full time and do these other things. And I said, great. But I didn't actually start to go get my Scrum Master test done until 2018. And I did it because I was working a side job for another company, project managing one of his web design projects. I had the skills built up for my first company, but my opportunities there seemed to be waning. So I opened the door to other opportunities. This other guy, he had done some work with our company. We were sort of partnered in a way for government work. And he says, I've got this other project I'm doing, and are you available? Would you like to work for me for one? I said, well, yeah, I'm not putting that many hours in at the other job. And see, the other thing I did by this point is I changed to a contract employee. I became my own LLC. I actually started filing taxes as a I think it's an S corp. I had the company accountant set that up for me, the one that I worked for, and I was able to actually work as my own company as a private contractor. And the company I worked for then paid me as a contractor, and I could completely change my tax footprint. It meant I could write stuff off that I'd never written off before. Was it scary? Yeah, but it was a different kind of scary. Like, I traded one set of scary, never making enough money in the first place, for the other scary of I'm making enough money now, but it could all be gone tomorrow.
Right.
I don't want to sound like that's so terrible. As long as you're applying yourself and the company has work, yeah, you can really kind of write your ticket about who you want to work for if you have the skill set.
So, going back to that skill set, because I have seen a few questions in here of like people asking, like, do you need to have some type of background in software development? Or I know, I think it was Melissa. I'm just going to read Melissa's. I think she sums it up, and I'm sure there's so many people that have thought through this, but said she's looked into software development or the software world, and she so badly wants to be good at it, but her brain just doesn't process coding well enough to do it. So she's wondering, is there still hope for someone doing something like project management within the tech world if that part of tech maybe doesn't resonate with you?
100%. I'm not a coder. Now, I have a basic interest in coding, and I have a general understanding of what software developers do, more now than I did 7 or 8 years ago.
Sure.
Right? Because I was a gamer and I liked gaming and stuff, and I'd learned a little bit of web code and that kind of stuff, but I was never all that great at it. I mean, we started learning BASIC in the 5th grade in my school back in California when I was a kid. So I had some exposure. I would say I just had some exposure and a general interest, but I never have sat down and coded anything serious. I've never sat and learned Python or BASIC or C++ or any of those code software you listen to or you hear about. I don't know any of that stuff. I do, however, have a pretty good idea now of what the assembly line for software looks like and how that functions. And it took me a while to learn that. So it's really about being open to learning and being willing to rein yourself in, take less money for a while as you're getting up the chain. And then eventually you will absorb enough to where you can be effective. What I do right now is I organize people and I help them do their best work, but I am in no way able to tell you exactly what the developers are doing. I got no clue.
So hope for anyone out there, if you're like, listen, I got the skill set of a project manager, right? Like, I'm organized, I can get people on task, I can get rid of blockers that are happening. Like, if you got that down, then yes, you are good. And I will say, I think it's for someone also who I have a very limited working knowledge of how things like coding or tech works. I can only imagine that if I were in a position where I was interacting with those people more, although it may not come, let's say, very naturally to me, I'm sure I would grow and learn a lot about that over time just from being involved in it more. So it feels scary when you're not doing any of it. But just thinking, like, I feel like I'm doing it every day. I still have the skills that I need, but I feel like I would gain so many skills from just the people I was working with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wanted to key in on something that Hugh said. This sounds very unlike teaching. And Hugh, it is, if you're only thinking about the trappings of the industry. But I get an opportunity to teach people almost every day, because when I'm onboarding people and they have no clue what they're doing, they've got to log into a site they've never used. They've got to backfill some paperwork they have to do to be able to get access to something. Something's not working right for them on that platform access. And I know all about that platform, so I can help them. It's coaching, it's teaching all the time. And when we have new team members, I am the one typically first in line to say, you're going to need to know this. Here's this information. Here, take this and read it. Go find it here. Here's the folders where we keep everything important. Be sure you sign in over there. Be sure you talk to that person. I'm constantly doing some kind of teaching or coaching almost every day.
Totally. And Selena, you are absolutely right. Teachers literally can do anything. And I really do challenge you to think about your skills on the day-to-day and what you bring to a table and how those can be applied to so many different roles. And I think it was on maybe the last webinar I brought up how the FBI at one point literally had an application for former teachers. It was like, if you are a teacher and you would like to be in the FBI, you apply on this link. Because they're like, listen, you have all of the skills that we want as a human being. We'll teach you how to do the work of an FBI agent. Those are all teachable things. What's not is all the intangibles you bring, like taking complex information and synthesizing it down to something really easy to understand. It's those types of things that is the base of so many different jobs. And even what I'm doing in marketing, am I doing teaching every day? No, but what makes me a good marketer is actually a lot of the things that made me a good teacher. So I think if you are a member of the Teacher Career Transition Academy, I suggest that you go into the academy and you find the 202 resume bullet points, because what it will do is it will take common jobs that people leave teaching for and give you bullet points that you can use to talk about your teaching experience in that same like corporate talk. If you're not a member, again, don't worry, I promise I'll get you information on who we are in just a moment. But I promise you, there is so much more that you can do with the skills that you have than just teaching. And when you really sit down and boil it down to what you're doing, genuinely, you can do pretty much anything. And if you don't even have all of those skills, they're typically things that you can be taught. So just keep that in mind on anything that you are even hearing tonight. Scrum is something you absolutely can go and learn. And there are so many resources that you can use to go do that. And Dan, I'm wondering, do you have any other suggestions just so far that we have missed within the chat that we should point people to if they do want to learn Scrum?
I was going to say, really, what the links that we put in there, and some of you were so kind to add, Jane, you added some stuff in there as well. Any of those places, you're going to want to look up the Agile Manifesto, go to scrum.org and look at the resources there, go through some of the learning pathway stuff, watch some of the videos. I would start there. And then I cannot emphasize enough what a difference it made for me. The book that I mentioned earlier, you should get a copy of it if you're trying to get out of teaching. What color is your parachute? It's updated every year. It's been out since the 1970s. They do a new edition every year. There's a lot of online resources. I promise you that book will help, because that's what taught me that when you sell yourself, you should not be selling yourself as a teacher. You should be selling yourself as a person with skills. And the skills are what you are marketing, not your role, not your label.
Yes, it's the skills in which you are bringing with you. Absolutely. Correct. And Jane, you still can't define Scrum. That's okay. Then you just need to do a little bit more learning. Like, no one's expecting you to come out tonight of like, I know absolutely every single thing. And that is actually, I think, what actually makes teachers so great is they are typically people who are so willing to learn, figure out the next thing in whatever it may be. So when it comes to things like your marketing materials, I know I've had this slide up and I want to, again, take this in whatever direction the chat wants to take it in with the questions that you have. But when it comes to upskilling, yes, you are going to want to make sure that you are still getting those certifications. Maybe it's Scrum Master, the first certification, Scrum Master 1. But same thing, make sure that you are still upskilling, even in taking what you are doing and thinking about how can I take this skill and present it in a different way. I am wondering, just as the last part of thinking about step 1 through 4 in the career transition process, Dan, is there anything particular to interviewing that you either have advice for, that you see often in this field? Because to me, a lot of these fields that tend to require certifications, it feels like to me, it's a lot of like steps 1 through 3 that there's more importance on their story. And the interview is more of just the formality of like, okay, now I'm in it. Mm-hmm. Now I just got to prove that I can do what I'm saying I can do.
Right. We have to be, build whatever confidence you can and go in with eyes wide open. Some companies are just going to reject you. I mean, like I said, I had a teaching career for 19 years and I couldn't get a teaching job. Right. So that feeling of rejection was very present for me. The interview process for me was a little different than it might be for some, because again, the people that hired me originally knew me already and were willing to take a chance on me where they might not have taken a chance on somebody who just walked in off the street. Right. So what I was able to do was largely because of the success I had in networking. So I want to be upfront about that. But interview questions are going to be based around your background and experience in the field where the company is doing the work. So that's why I suggest be willing to do some of the entry-level stuff where you might be able to glean some experience. Because if you go in and say, I want to be a Scrum Master, and you have no experience, that's going to be unlikely, especially for a shop that's been around for a while. They're going to ask you, what do you know about software development? What do you know about Agile? What do you know about Scrum? They're going to ask those kinds of questions. And so to prepare properly for that, it'll be good to have a little bit of experience in the field first. And you can often move up in the same company, which is, again, that's exactly what happened to me. I worked for the same company for a while and kept taking on more and more responsibility as the company grew. And that's how I've ended up where I am now. So.
Absolutely. And then Stephanie, perfect time on the question. Would you say that is similar for project management roles? Should they be applying for the entry-level PM roles?
I would agree with that. Yeah. And so project coordinator is often where you start. You're doing a lot of scheduling, you're taking phone calls, you're directing people, you're helping management get to where they need to be, or execs get to where they need to be. And gradually that's how you pick up a lot of what you need to know to become a project manager. By the way, you can't even get a PMP certification unless you've been a project manager for a number of years. They want you to have a whole bunch of hours actually managing projects before you get the cert. So that's how the project management certification works. Different than Scrum, but still it's important to actually get a little experience on your resume before you try to go to the high level.
Yeah. Chris, quick answer for you. Yes. So for our Teacher Career Transition Academy members, this recording will be available typically within like 2 days within the Academy in the Career Exploration video library. So absolutely. And then again, non-members, we'll get you all that info in a second. Melissa was also wondering what entry-level positions would look like in a tech company, and maybe is there something lower than like a PM or a PC, which I imagine.
There's some organizational, I would say, like project coordinator, administrative assistant. I know that sounds like secretary, but it's an important role. The execs are way too busy to be able to do everything they need to do. So having a great executive assistant, somebody who can help them organize stuff and get where they need to be and see what they need to see, is like gold. So if you can find good administrative assistant entry-level positions, that's often a good place in the door.
And I also feel like that can be a great place that's something you can get without any certification. So if you're trying to beef up your certifications and you're like, I need a role now, that's almost a great place to start, where you can also still be getting your other certs.
Exactly. Yeah. But I would say those are the types of things, any sort of low-level organizational type of roles where they need help keeping the company on the rails, but you're not going to be responsible for managing a lot of people or anything. That's where I would start.
Awesome.
Today's episode is sponsored by the Teacher Career Transition Academy. Are you eager to explore new possibilities but find yourself unsure of where to start? Look no further than our Teacher Career Directory. Available for free, this comprehensive resource features over 200 careers tailored for transitioning teachers. Dive into detailed insights, including average U.S. salary ranges, occupational outlooks, and even a personalized skills and interests inventory. Download now at teachercareertransitionacademy.com/directory. I'll also drop the link in the show notes of this episode. So don't miss out and claim your free directory today at teachercareertransitionacademy.com/directory.
Melissa, I love that you're asking that question. And I know that everyone's in a different boat where, depending on your circumstance at home, maybe you are able to take like a big pay cut for a certain number of whatever that time for me, and maybe you're not. So I know that this is very based on what you are able to do. As someone who is, again, not in this field, if I can give you any type of like inspiration story within this, the job that I first took out of teaching, I was making just barely over what I made teaching. It was like pennies more. The reason I ended up leaving that job to then take the job that I am in now is I happened to find a job about 3 months into my first one, that same job in, again, ed tech, 2 completely different ed tech companies. And it was going to pay me legitimately double what I was making in my current job. That's truthfully why I applied, and just coupled with the fact too, that I was so much more passionate about what their mission was and what their company was. Like SEL was such a big thing for me that I wanted to get back into that world, especially if I'm staying within education. So I promise you, even if you're like, this may be hard for a bit, there are so many things that you can do to try to make ends meet. And I know that so many of you know that with teaching, that teaching was probably not your only job. even if you've been teaching for a while, you can think back to those days that you had more than one. But the beautiful thing about the corporate world, You can move up fast. And even if it's not in your own company, I switched companies 3 months later and was able to double that salary. Dan, you've talked about how through all of your networking and moving up, you were also able to expand. And you're like, now I am totally fine. So just throwing it out there. Timing is going to be different for everyone, and everyone's position is quite different as well. But sometimes just to get to where we are now of like, we're not in that first role, we're in that next one or maybe the one after that. You may have to take a step back, but boy, let me tell you, it is so much easier to blast off. It's not going to be like a step ladder in school where it's like, I get $1,000 more this year is like your biggest bonus. So like, just know there are so many more opportunities.
Big time. And Melissa's asking a question. I really wanted to insert something really quickly if I could. The ed question is a perfectly timely question.
Yes.
I think in my mind, a great way to transition would be to go exactly to that kind of company like Pearson, that they do all the testing software and all that. If you could learn the ropes at a place like that where you have the education experience, you might be bringing something to the table that they need from your teaching background. And then you could easily slide into a more software focused role as you work for someplace like that. So I would be looking at all the ed tech companies, Pearson and what have you, that create the software for teachers and see where the opportunities are there.
Yes. And I can tell you, both of my jobs have been in ed tech, and ed tech wants to hire teachers. I was hired. I had the smallest amount of minimal marketing experience. I kid you not, was like 2 months of experience of marketing from my college years. And that was like before most social media channels were invented. And like now that's like a part of my job is social media. I was hired because they're like, hey, marketing, those types of things, we can teach you that. And you have a little bit of knowledge, which is cool, but the other people we were interviewing didn't. We want you here because you are a teacher. You know the market. You know what resonates with teachers. You know what resonates with admin. That is, ed tech is such a great place. So I'm with you, Dan. Like, if you're like, yes, I think that a Scrum Master, I like Agile, those types of roles are for me. I would encourage you as someone in ed tech to also look within all the different ed tech companies. Again, think curriculum companies. I work for an SEL curriculum, even like the attendance system. Like those are all platforms that need people.
Exactly.
So think anything in the ed world. And then Melissa, I am always happy if people want to talk about ed tech. I just dropped my LinkedIn in here. I promise it's been my busy season. I'm about to hit the road for a few months, but I promise that if you want to get some ed tech questions out, I'd be happy to answer those questions. That's all I've been in since I've left teaching. Dan, you are welcome to. You do not need to, but if you want to drop your LinkedIn in just for people, feel free. But yes, if people have ed tech questions, I'm happy to answer any of those, even though I may not be in the same like role as Dan is. Obviously, I am in marketing. I can at least answer questions around anything in the ed tech world because it is a great place to look if you are a teacher looking to leave education. So
there's my LinkedIn. If anybody would like to drop me a message or connect with me there, I'm happy to hear from you. And
I will tell everyone here, you should, because that's the way LinkedIn works. I promise you, it is not weird. Melissa, that's weird. You shouldn't have to pay for LinkedIn to message. So what you should do is connect. And then when you connect, you can send a message, do it that way. And then once you're connected, you can free flow messages, but send a message through connecting. So sorry, I didn't even think about that. People new to LinkedIn, the way to message people, if you're not yet connected with them, when you click connect, send them a message. And then when they connect, the message free flow go through. And I promise you, this is not like Facebook. It's not weird when you get like a rogue request from someone you've never heard of. That's like literally the point of LinkedIn. So never feel weird about requesting people you do not know, asking for their time, things like that. And then Hugh, that's a great point to bring up. If you're like, I'm not even really sure what to do with my LinkedIn, Teacher Career Transition Academy. We have lots of resources we can help you with, but also going just to LinkedIn, do a free trial of LinkedIn Learning. LinkedIn can teach you how to even create your LinkedIn better. I know I use a lot of LinkedIn Learning videos when I was trying to beef mine up too. So I know right at the end, we like really opened up a new can of worms here, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Yeah. I knew that was going to happen too.
You know what? And I told you, I was like, this group, I can feel they're going to be people with questions. And you did. And I will say, I did have to write down a few just to make sure that I got to them all today. So you guys did trump the last group in that sense where I did not have to write them all down, but boy, they are active. You guys, great job in getting the questions in there because this is part of your time. Yeah, Chris, go you guys. This is your time that we want to make meaningful and impactful. So I will also, let me throw this out there. I know it's been up here, but last call for any questions. If you do have any lingering ones, whether it be about this exact role or just something within the career transition process, I will just leave it up here for last call with anything else. And then, like I said, I'm about to get you all the info in the world that you need about the Teacher Career Transition Academy. So just hang tight for that. Selena, great way to end it here. How do you deal with ageism, Dan? How do we do it?
I think for me, and I cannot speak for everybody, okay, and I think it's going to be probably more related to the industry that you choose rather than anything else. I think it really just has to do with what's going on in that industry and who are the most dynamic people in it. And unfortunately, if you're an unknown commodity and you are an older person that you're not already part of that team, it can seem like they're excluding you because of your age, but it's really more because you're a big unknown. And people who are older, they sometimes have a harder time, I think. Old dog, new tricks. They're having a harder time necessarily getting you to sink in to be malleable like a younger person might be who is just fresh off the boat. So what I would say on this, the way I dealt with it, is I just tried to learn as much as I could so that I could be as much of a help in the area they needed me the most, even if it wasn't what I really wanted to do. And then my age mattered less. Plus, I also chose a company that had people around my age already running it. And I was able to interface with them in a way that maybe a larger corporation, I wouldn't have been able to. So I think ageism is less of an issue if you have a smaller company and if they have a real need for what you bring to the table and you're willing to learn. But if you go to a larger company, it might be harder. And that's because of just the way the world works, I think, and the way that the people who are older sometimes are harder to train, I think, is what that comes down to.
And especially in thinking about the tech world, I think there is some unfortunate stereotypes of like, if you are within the older generation, you would not understand some of these tech things. But I think if you can show that that's not the case, Selena, I would also recommend really doing more networking too, to like meet those people, make that connection and show them that it doesn't matter what your age is, like you totally got this and you can be a great candidate for them. You may just have to do a little bit more of that compared to someone else. So I would definitely try to lean into that as well. And then Erica, seeing you, if you want to transition in tech, are there other up and coming career tracks we should consider? That's a really good question.
It is a good question. I don't know a really great answer for that other than every company needs help in a number of different areas that are not necessarily related to what the product is that they produce. So like I said earlier, administrative assistant or marketing or social media stuff. I know I've worked for a couple of companies where they were doing web design. So I became a helpful coordinator for their process to get people in a room, hold the meetings, make sure they know what they're doing, that kind of stuff. Basic level project management stuff, organizational stuff, running operations meetings, things like that. I would say those types of tracks, all companies need that kind of work. Somebody's got to mop the floors and take out the trash, right? Somebody's got to file stuff. Somebody's got to answer phones, be willing to do those kinds of things really, really well, and then see where you can work your way into other things. That would be what I would do.
And Erica, I can tell you there's a stat that we use all the time in our marketing materials at the company I work for. And I'm going to be honest, this is embarrassing because I know I don't have the number exactly in my head. It's either 70 or 90. I think 70 makes more sense, but I think it's like 70% of the jobs in the next, I think it's 10 years don't even exist yet. And that's like what my company is even helping to aim to is like, how do we help kids prepare for the world when the jobs that they're going to do don't exist yet? So if we even think about things that way, there's going to be new jobs popping up that we haven't even anticipated yet. And I even think that goes back to kind of Selena's question about the ageism. We're still going to need people to do these new jobs regardless of their age and who they are. So I think just finding your avenue in whatever it may be. And if you want to just be in the world of tech, let me tell you, you can do anything at a tech company. You could do sales. You could do marketing. You could come and do project management. I think if tech is just your goal, there's definitely options of how you can get there. It's really then just thinking about what type of work do you actually want to do within the tech world outside of just being in a company that provides tech, if that makes sense.
Consider corporate training as well. I did consider that for a long time, and I still hope to do that in the future with the company I'm with, but that's another avenue for teachers. If you can learn enough about the product to teach other people how to use it, you're a corporate trainer.
Absolutely. Members, we do have videos in the career exploration video library, yes, about people who are corporate trainers. So you can definitely check those out if you would like a bit more information. So Hugh, it is, I will say, it's one of those fields, a lot of people, corporate, any type of training and development, teachers are trying to get into that because it's a very easy, like adjacent role to what teaching is. So you're going to have a lot more candidates in that. So I will tell everyone kind of like my last big piece of advice is when it comes to applying for jobs, it is all about the quantity over the quality. Sorry. It's all about the quality over the quantity. Goodness. You can blast out millions of resumes. If you are not taking the time to customize each one for that company, using words from their job description, it is so much harder to get your foot in the door. And that's all job transitioning is. It is about getting your foot in the door. You got to get that first interview, and then the ball's in your court. Like, you have more control, but it is tough to get your foot into that door in this market. So the more that you can do, and I know it feels demoralizing to put so much work into one resume that then doesn't get picked up. I sent in so many of those, but eventually those are the ones that are going to get you there. And I can tell you from my experience, the ones that I worked the hardest on ended up being the ones that I could get my foot into the door more. I definitely could have done more things like networking. I know my resume was really strong. I customized them all, but there's always more things that you can do to just make it a little bit stronger. But I will name, I know it's hard, especially if you're still teaching, to find the time, the capacity. It is tough. So whatever you can do, whether you're like 15 minutes a week, that's all I can dedicate. Whatever it is that you can dedicate to your career transition, it does take time and it takes energy, even outside of doing things like getting certifications for a role like this. So it's a tough market to break into, but it is absolutely possible. And I love that. Thank you so much, Dan.
You bet. This is a good friend of mine. I can highly recommend her. She does resume services, job search coaching, and she does LinkedIn optimization. She did it for me. There is money involved. It's worth every penny you will spend, I promise you. And if she can't help you, she will guide you to somebody who can.
That is even just a perfect lead into what I was about to bring up next, Sam, which is exactly everything that we also do here at the Teacher Career Transition Academy, because that is what we are here for, is to help you get to that next step, whatever that next step may be. So whether it's teaching you about a new role through a webinar today, or we do also as well, whether it's resume coaching, we have group coaching calls, we have a self-led academy that you work through to get the help that you need outside of like the calls that we host. I will make sure that I'm going to pass things over to Lisa in just a moment here to get you all that information. But before I do, Dan, I owe you a huge thank you.
Well, friends, that concludes another inspiring teacher career transition story. Whether you're left feeling certain that this career path is your next calling, or you can cross it off your list, I know you're walking away with valuable insights to take with you. If you want to access even more stories like these, there's an entire library of teacher career transition stories within the Teacher Career Transition Academy under the Career Exploration module of the program. If you're interested in learning more about the Academy, I'll drop a link in the show notes. And don't forget to check out our podcast channel for other great advice from our coaches and experts. Until next time, remember, friends, the journey is just the beginning. Embrace the adventure.